The fourth short story, The Blind Date. I had arranged to meet my date at the pub nearby. I knew the place. It had an arboretum next to it, which I had always wanted to explore. I arrived early to give myself time to wander through the wood, filled with some magnificent ancient trees, some of which had been there hundreds of years, perhaps dating back to Henry VIII's reign. Bill Leck and I met on an online dating site. He looked nice, a warm smile and mousy-colored hair, combed neatly away from his forehead, and when we spoke to arrange the meeting, his voice was pleasant, not overbearing or dominant. Reminded me a bit of my father. The day was warm and sunny. We could sit outside, a safe place to meet and talk, and hopefully begin a new romance. I had about 45 minutes to wait, and so I parked my car and set off into the wood. The paths were winding, round the trees I thought. Under my feet, soft, dry sandy earth marked out the path, kind to my summer sandals. A few other people with dogs said friendly hellos as we went in opposite directions. It will be easy to wander back. I've only got to retrace my steps. I will allow myself 20 minutes of exploring. I didn't want to get back before Bill arrived. Somehow I felt it might look as though I was too eager if I was waiting for him. Suddenly, I realized I had taken the wrong path. Instead of heading back towards the welcoming pub, I found myself going deeper into a tall pine forest. Where the hell was I? Immediately the place became darker and more foreboding. Trees stretched high into the sky. Few birds were chirping and going about their business of foraging for insects. I decided to press on, hoping to wind back to where I wanted to be. The trees seemed taller and closer together. Their canopies merged up above, blotting out the sun. I glanced down at the path. No path. Where was it? How had I managed to lose the path? While I had been too busy thinking about my date and mentally falling in love with this unknown man, the path had just vanished, just soft pine needles everywhere, nothing giving me a clue as to where I was. I looked down at my watch. Nothing there on my wrist. Had I forgotten to put it on this morning? I didn't remember knocking against anything to cause it to fall off. How long had I been out in this dark and now cold wood? A crow squawked high above me in the treetops. My chest tightened with fear, and I was afraid I was having a heart attack. Was it a crow, or something more sinister? I forced myself to move forward. Was it forward, or was I just going round in circles? I had no way of knowing. All the trees seemed alike. A voice. Was that a voice I heard somewhere off to the right? No, I am not sure if it came from over there or elsewhere. The sound was comforting. Someone was looking for me. Then it became more menacing and harsh, as though the person was getting annoyed when I didn't respond. I stopped instead of moving in the direction I thought the sound came from. What did I know of this Bill? Almost nothing. We had talked, although he mainly asked me questions at the same time as telling me nothing about himself. Suddenly the voice reminded me of my father again. Not the warm, friendly voice, but the other he used when he was really angry and caused people to back away. Bill had been quite flirty on the phone, and if I am honest, just a little too suggestive. But I was ready to fall in love, and had laughed. Now I didn't know. What was he really like? The shout came again. Angrier, I thought. I began to run away from the voice. Faster, stumbling over raised tree roots. Please God, show me the way out. He was coming closer. In my panic, I looked for somewhere to hide. I saw a large holly bush and decided to hide in there. I didn't notice the sharp thorns tearing my hands and face. So desperate was I. Crawling under the branches, I half crouched and half lay against the trunk. He was coming closer. I could hear the sound of his feet as he scuffed his way through pine needles and dried leaves. Oh God, he's got a torch. I curled up tighter, dropping my head to conceal my face, but not before I realized it was the light on his phone. He accidentally turned the light towards his face, and I saw, not the kindly man on the dating site, but a face screwed up with anger. He called my name again and again, each time harsher and more menacing. Oh God, he's got a torch. I curled up tighter, dropping my head to conceal my face, but not before I realized it was the light on his phone. He accidentally turned the light towards his face, and I saw, not the kindly man on the dating site, but a face screwed up with anger. He called my name again and again, each time harsher and more menacing. I lay there for I don't know how long, bitterly regretting the lack of my watch, all the while thinking about him, about us. It was as if the last few weeks and months flashed through my mind. A friend had signed me up for this dating site. I was quite inexperienced with that sort of thing. The man I had fallen for seemed nice, and I'd felt comfortable. Then I began to think back. At first he'd seemed so normal, but not overly keen. That is, until he began to ask me questions. In my enthusiasm to be open and honest, I'd talked about my very wealthy aunt who had left everything to me. House, money, and all her worldly goods. I described the imposing Georgian farmhouse, the outbuildings and land. He asked me what I did for work, and I, almost proudly, told him I didn't work, unless you counted the various charities. I told him about my financial guy, who had explained all about where my money was invested and what income I could expect. He asked me what sort of car I drove. Again, in a showing-off kind of way, I explained that my aunt had an elderly Aston Martin, which for old time's sake, I was driving. Later, I realized he would have seen the distinctive car in the car park and had known I was already there. I chatted on, not realizing that while I was opening up my life and my heart to him, he gave away nothing. Was his name really Bill Leck, or had he pinched it from the well-known local landowners? How old was he? He never said. Later, I realized he would have seen the distinctive car in the car park and had known I was already there. I chatted on, not realizing that while I was opening up my life and my heart to him, he gave away nothing. Was his name really Bill Leck, or had he pinched it from the well-known local landowners? How old was he? He never said. Money. Was he one of those men who preyed on vulnerable women and scammed them out of millions? Would I have let him? Maybe. They found me, lying about 10 yards away from the path, unconscious, a large lump on my head. Had I bumped into a tree, or was it something more sinister? Afterwards, all I could remember was the what and how dark and scary it was. I had no idea of how I came to be there. No memory of who found me lying in a heap with my clothes dirty and torn. Nothing. Everything was obliterated from my mind.